Longtime viewers of the channel know that I love me some Hondas. When the brand gets it right, they really do get it right. There's a reason why we call these 90s classics the golden era Hondas. But this particular EK Civic represents a new blind spot for me, something I've never experienced before. Not only is the EK Civic one of my favorite body styles, but the owner of this car, Steven, has done an H2B swap. Before everyone was doing K24s in their Hondas, if you wanted a big bore engine in your Honda, you did the H2B. Under the hood is a 2.3 liter H23A engine out of an Accord SIR wagon, and paired to it is a B-Series transmission, specifically the 5-speed LSD out of an EK9 Civic Type R. As you can clearly see, it's way more than just a powertrain upgrade under the hood. So today we're going to hit the winding canyon roads outside of Los Angeles and see what this thing can really do. Sorry in advance for any wind noise. The windows are down because the AC does not currently work in this car. But I wasn't kidding when I said that this thing is more special than just the engine swap under the hood. I think a lot of car enthusiasts will relate to Steven with this build because this was his first car. He bought it in high school in 2007 and has had it since. Not only is that very impressive, I think a lot of car enthusiasts wish they could have their first car back. But it's more deep than that. Because this is an early 90s Honda, it was actually stolen in 2010, and he was able to get it recovered 2 years later. And since then, it's been a labor of love, not only restoring it back to its former glory, but going even further. First up, let's talk about the exterior. It's stunning. It has an EM1 Civic Si front end, it has some fantastic aero on it, and it really does impart upon you that OEM Plus EK9 Civic Type R vibe. Also helping things out is the paint work. Now, Steven has had this car fully resprayed by a professional body shop, and it looks fantastic. They took Honda's Nighthawk Black Pearl paint and added extra blue pearl into it. And so in the sunlight, this car pops. It's really amazing. Also, check out the period correct 15-inch Buddy Club P1 wheels in mag blue. It looks so good. This car is unbelievable to look at in person. The interior is also amazing. Similar to the exterior, Steven's gone with the OEM Plus vibe. So he's maintained everything original in this interior, no crack dash, everything's in fantastic condition. But what he has done is add in all these great OEM elements. This steering wheel is a DC5 Integra Type R OEM wheel, and it feels great. I learned to drive stick on my buddy's DC5 RSX Type S, so I immediately feel at home holding this little wheel. If you can't tell, I'm sitting in Recaros. These are actually the OEM Recaros out of a Mitsubishi Evo 8. And at the end of the day, it's a golden era Honda. The EK has fantastic driver ergonomics. The seating position's fantastic. All the pedals, the steering wheel, everything falls to hand naturally. The pedals are perfectly spaced for heel and toe driving. And look at it, the sills are really low, the glass is huge. It makes driving this thing around very stress-free, very enjoyable. But of course, up here on a winding canyon road is the hardware that matters. Let's talk about this powertrain. It's my first time driving an H-Series engine. I've actually never had the pleasure. And this really is the prototype to what a K24 would eventually become. This 2.3 liter engine revs at 7,200 RPM, but it has this fat wave of torque. By the time you're at 2,000 RPM, this thing has a really usable torque band. All right, let's drop it down, 3 grand. Oh yeah, pulls nicely. Oh, hi there. It's your boy, just checking in. Are you enjoying the video so far? Well, of course you are. That's because this is some grade A primo content we're talking about. So go ahead and show your support by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. It's free and it helps the channel. All right, back to the video. know, as much as I love the B Series and the K Series engines, as a less expensive alternative, because let's be honest, getting a K Series into an old chassis like this is a ton of work. The H23 or an H22, depending on which one you get, makes a lot of sense here. You know, this thing has so much power by 4,000 RPM, you don't need to ring it out if you don't want to. But when you do, it does sound really nice. It has an AEM long tube intake on it and a long tube header that's been paired with the OEM cat and a relatively restrained OEM Plus style catback. So it's not super loud, barring an intermittent exhaust rattle that needs to be repaired on this car, but it's a really nice, rich sounding 90s Honda. When you lean into it like this, after adding the bolt-ons to this engine, Steven actually had this so tuned by KV-Tune, the guy who dyno-tuned my Civic Si, and did a great job. Even on KV's conservative reading dyno and with a few issues, this thing made about 190 wheel horsepower. And so it makes this thing feel really, really quick, just like a K24. When I review my friend Alex's K24 swapped 8th gen Civic Si, this has a very similar feeling. This produces a bit less power than a K24, obviously, but the EK is so much lighter that I'm willing to bet these are just as fast in the real world. The second part of the H2B swap, H engine, B transmission. This is, like I mentioned, the EK9 Civic Type R B Series LSD transmission. It shifts beautifully. The gearing is really, really tight. That's actually one thing Steven doesn't like, because this thing sits at 4,000 RPM at 70 miles per hour on the freeway, and when we have the H23 with so much torque, it really does feel a bit overkill. But on a winding road like this, it's fantastic. It's so fun, and because it is his weekend toy, why not? The tight gearing keeps you on it. You're shifting all the time, which is what you want, because you want to shift this transmission because it feels so good. The ride and handling is great as well. I was quite surprised when I got into this thing how nicely it rides on the streets. You know, cruising this canyon road, I had to hop on the freeway, drive city streets, etc., and it was surprisingly compliant. And then I looked at his mod list and it all made sense. Steven has done an EK9 suspension conversion. So it's an EK9 rear trailing arm, which allows him to run rear disc brakes off an RSX. And he has EK9 discs up front as well. All the suspension bushings are OEM Plus hardened rubber. So you reduce that compliance in the suspension, but not make it harsh. This thing rolls on Koni Sport ground control combo. That's Koni yellows that have been converted to accept a coilover perch and metric coilover springs. And so this thing rides fantastically. If you've driven on a car with Koni yellows before, you'll be immediately familiar with how this rides. There's just enough compliance on the street, but it feels really nice on a winding road like this. A bit less nice are these tires, if I'm honest. By Steven's own admission, they're quite old. These are actually Deriza Star Spec Z1s, which, if you know anything about tires, you know just how old that is. So they are way past their prime. He's going to change them eventually, but for now, pretty low grip. You know, double wishbone Hondas, the golden era Hondas, are so light, they don't need a ton of tire. When it comes to the handling, one of the interesting things about this car is actually the power steering setup. The H series engine's at a different angle when it gets mounted to the B series transmission. And so not only has Steven had to use a modified hood to clear the engine, but it means that the stock H series power steering pump wouldn't clear the front of the car. What he ended up doing is finding a smaller power steering pump of a single cam Civic, and sure enough, because it's a Honda, these old ones are Legos, it bolts right up and just clears the front by like a millimeter. And so the end result is the power steering is very, very light. It actually feels quite nice because, well, it's such a lightweight car. It does feel pretty well paired, all things considered. What I think is so cool about this car is it's not just the sum of all of its parts. Because Steven has owned this car for 15 years, it's really grown alongside him. This car has taught him how to tinker, how to modify, and kind of what he wants out of this experience. And I think that's so awesome because really, how many of us would love to have our high school first car back and use the knowledge and the skills and realistically the money we have now to do it over again, to do it better. And so this car has evolved with him. It's his ultimate weekend car. It has a bitchin' stereo with Android Auto. It has great suspension. It has a great powertrain. It looks awesome. It's his kind of get in and do anything car. If you want to have fun, just get in the EK and drive it because that's what he made this car for and that's what it does so well. This is just such a great car. Steven's really nailed this thing down. I hope he keeps it forever. All right, guys. My name is Jake. You've been watching Drive, Brake, Fix, Repeat. You've also been watching me fall in love with Steven's EK Civic because this thing is so damn good. And I think that's all I got for you guys. So I will see you guys next time. We're going to do more fun things with cars. Bye.